What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gooner channel, and today's video is about the shock news that we're all dealing with and processing over the last week. Firstly, Mourinho sacked by Roma, then Jurgen Klopp on Friday coming out and saying that he will not be Liverpool's manager for next season, and yesterday Xavi announcing the same as Barcelona manager under different circumstances. The surprise around Jurgen Klopp, of course, was that this is a manager who last season had his worst season as Liverpool manager, and for many of us thought this might be the beginning of the end, because it seemed unlikely that he was going to be able to completely reinvigorate the team, having lost as many midfielders as he did and brought in as many new players. His reputation as a manager is almost unparalleled. You could say that only Pep Guardiola in modern football has a better pedigree. What he's done at Liverpool has been astonishing, and not least because this season they are top of the league. They're in the League Cup final. They have a tie against Norwich to progress to the fifth round of the FA Cup today, and they are many people's favourites to win the Europa League. So he could do a quadruple this season before bowing out. And I think for Liverpool fans, this is going to be a really hard time. I thought that the timing was unusual because it's not normal for a manager to quit at the very top of his game and continue on for another 3 or 4 months. But listening to Jurgen Klopp, who I think most of us believe is a man of great integrity, the reasons seemed fairly good. He's 56 years old, he's recently become a grandfather, and he talked about the pressure of being Liverpool manager and just wanting to experience a normal life. Now, of course, when Pep Guardiola was asked about it, he said, look, don't expect him to stay out of football for long. But Klopp himself has absolutely ruled out ever managing another team in England other than Liverpool, which I take him at his word. I think it'd be really difficult to go back on that. But it also is a continuing problem for Liverpool, because it will mean that at a time when a new manager comes in, Jurgen Klopp will be in the background, and if it doesn't go well over the first couple of seasons, is that going to be a spectre, very much like Alex Ferguson was at Man United? It's an undeniably difficult time for Liverpool, a team who have historically always been able to look to their boot room for replacements for managers. I'm thinking of the Paisleys and the Shankleys and Dalglish. Klopp broke that mould. He came in from Dortmund and totally rejuvenated how they play and created a completely new style of play, which was hugely successful. And but for Pep Guardiola, he might have swept all before him. So how do you replace someone like that? Now, the obvious main contender everyone is talking about is Xabi Alonso, who is performing minor miracles at Bayer Leverkusen. Remember, Bayer Leverkusen have never won the Bundesliga and now are pretty much favourites to do that, with Thomas Tuchel's Bayern Munich in all kinds of disarray. So Xabi Alonso has sort of addressed this and said that he's just focused on Bayer Leverkusen in the next match, which is all you'd expect him to say. Is it possible that Liverpool could come calling for him and he could turn it down? Maybe not. Mourinho is a different case. Mourinho, who in his pomp was unquestionably one of the world's best managers, if not the world's best manager, a product of Barcelona in the sense that he has taken a completely different attitude. He seems to have learned the way that Barcelona and the Cruyffian style of football, he's learned how to nullify that. And it was his battle with Pep Guardiola whilst he was Real Madrid manager that seemed to be a part of the reason Pep didn't want to continue anymore and needed to take a year off. Is Mourinho still the manager he was? Well, at Roma, he was dismissed. I think he'd fallen out with the board. They had very little to do with him, and when they flew in to sack him, it came as a huge shock. We saw the images of him crying as he left, and the Roma fans distraught, because whilst he might not have had them in contention for Serie A, he's manager to win a European trophy and made 2 finals consecutively. So it's not like Mourinho's out of the question. But I think the reason I'm doing this video is because there is a growing section of the Arsenal fan base. In a recent poll I did asking, would you be Arteta in or Arteta out? 25% of you said that you would be ready to see Arteta go. You feel he's taken us as far as he can. Now, I'm not quite there yet. I still feel like he's done enough to deserve the chance to win silverware with Arsenal, and from where we were when he took over to where we are now is a huge improvement, and that trajectory is upward and positive, and so I'm not necessarily keen to let him go. But I'm not saying that I think you're wrong when you feel like he might not win anything. So with Klopp and Xavi and Mourinho adding their names to the current list of managers who are without a club, and mindful of the fact that Klopp has ruled out any management at all for a year, I'm not going to add him to this list. But I thought what I'd do is rather than just say you want Arteta out, surely there's someone you'd like to replace Arteta with. So I thought we could take a look at that now. And I want to start with Zinedine Zidane, who is without question one of the most successful managers not to be currently working. He has repeatedly said when he was linked with Chelsea that he doesn't want to manage in England, doesn't want to learn English. So he's kind of ruled himself out. But I think for most of us, if Zinedine Zidane offered to manage Arsenal, it might be the kind of appointment where you'd think, well, Arteta would have to step aside. I think it's unlikely for all the reasons I've already given. So Zinedine Zidane is out and Jurgen Klopp is out. But what about Mourinho? Is the fact that he managed Tottenham going to count against him? Is it true that he hasn't quite got that killer mentality that he had before, and that his style of football is not exactly exciting to watch, even if it is really effective? Could Jose Mourinho come to Arsenal and take us over the line and finish the dinner that Arteta has cooked for us so far? What about Antonio Conte, another ex-Tottenham manager who on his day is one of the best managers in Europe and is currently unemployed? I think that the association with Tottenham, and having watched what they went through with him as manager, would surely put most of us off, wouldn't it? But then there's Hansi Flick. Hansi Flick, who won the sextuple with Bayern Munich. What he really did well at Bayern Munich was bring together this dressing room full of egos into a family unit which swept all before it. They won the sextuple in style, and of course, when the German team coach job became available, he couldn't turn it down, and he left a big hole in Bayern's setup, which they replaced with the up-and-coming Julian Nagelsmann, who was very much someone they felt was going to be a long-term success at Bayern. But he ended up falling out with Oli Kahn and Salihamidzic, who essentially threw him under the bus to protect themselves, and then were both dismissed as well. They brought in Thomas Tuchel to replace him, and Thomas Tuchel is not exactly popular with Bayern fans at the moment, and I'm not sure he's going to make it all the way through to the end of the season. Certainly, if Xabi Alonso's Bayer Leverkusen win the Bundesliga this year, you'd have to imagine Thomas Tuchel's time is going to be short unless he pulls off some sort of miracle in the Champions League. Hansi Flick is a manager that I obviously have a lot of time for. I think his key skill and attribute did him no good whatsoever in the German team. He wasn't able to unite that team, and so there are question marks about it. His success came in a very small period, building on a team of superstars and getting them over the line. Let me know in the comments, do you think Hansi Flick is the right man to manage in the Premier League, or more importantly, to manage at Arsenal? And of course, for those of us who don't even want to see Arteta go, we do have to concede that he is a product of La Masia. He is a Barcelona graduate. Whilst he never played for Barcelona, the guess is that that is a team very close to his heart, and probably the only team that he would definitely want to leave Arsenal for. So is it possible that with Xavi announcing his departure yesterday, that Arteta would take it on? Arteta, I think, is feeling some of the pressure of being an Arsenal manager, but I don't think it's anything like the pressure that Xavi talked about when he left. And Xavi's announcement came hot on the heels of losing 3-5 to Villarreal with two very unkind goals in extra time. But they are floundering 10 points behind Girona and Real Madrid, and he feels, and he said, that the pressure of being Barcelona manager is cruel, that it's never quite enough. He, of course, won La Liga in his first full season with Barcelona in very trying circumstances. This is not a Barcelona who are spending the kind of money they did on Neymar and Coutinho, who are a powerhouse in the market. They are going through their financial troubles, and any manager coming into Barcelona is going to have to rebuild there as well. If Arteta did decide to leave, would you have Xavi coming into Arsenal? Has Xavi done enough? In only his second management job, he did well at Barcelona, but it didn't last. Would you be worried that he wouldn't quite be enough to gel these players together? A point I made in the live stream we did on Thursday was the players we currently have at Arsenal are all Arteta players, pretty much. They've come in to play for Arteta, and until they lose faith in Arteta, it seems like we would be causing a lot of unnecessary disturbance in changing things. Now, of course, if we end up finishing outside the top four this season, or the season goes really badly from here, then I think the clamour to have Arteta leave may grow to a point where it is likely to happen. But I don't see Xavi as a natural replacement for him. Bielsa now managing the Uruguay side. Rafa Benitez is currently at Celta Vigo. And he had long enough at Liverpool to try and win the league and wasn't able to do it there. And I think it would be arguably harder to get Arsenal to that position. I think Rafa Benitez may be a manager of the past, a bit like Mourinho seems to be. And then there's Joachim Löw, who was World Cup winner with Germany, assistant at Germany, then winner at Germany as manager. He's been out of work for nearly 3 years, and it doesn't seem like he's in any great hurry to step in, and hasn't really got a reputation as a top club manager either. So who are these managers? Of course, if we are going to replace Arteta, it surely should be somebody with a proven track record and pedigree. For me, it just doesn't seem like there's anyone out there. What a lot of people have said is that it's not good enough to keep Arteta just because he's the best around. But I do think that if you're going to replace him with an untested, untried manager, then you're inviting problems. As we've seen from the last week, the management merry-go-round moves quickly, and it's not inconceivable to me that Pep Guardiola might leave Manchester City in 2025 at the end of his contract. Although at exactly the time that Jurgen Klopp was telling the Liverpool board that he didn't have the energy to continue, Pep Guardiola made a statement in November alluding to the fact that he still had plenty of energy and might consider staying at Manchester City. I don't know. I've felt for a while now that he's reaching the end of the time that he wants to spend doing it. And he also is a person who has in the past needed time off to recharge the year he spent in New York. These are men who, at the age they are, still deserve a little bit of family time. They still deserve a little bit of a normal life. And the pressure of what they do is constant 24 hours a day pressure, which I think the rest of us have no idea how we would deal with. For me, it is a real sadness to see Jurgen Klopp go. If I think about a Premier League in the next 2 years without either Jurgen Klopp or Pep Guardiola, it does seem like a lesser league. It would also be frustrating on some level if the only time Arteta could win the league, if he does go on to win it, would be in the absence of those two ahead of them. Sean made the point in the live stream that, this season we could still win it if somehow, like skaters in a race, if the two front teams could bump into each other. Of course, that doesn't really happen in football. But if both Man City and Liverpool fall away and Arteta wins the league, I think that the clamour for him to go amongst a quarter of our fan base would disappear anyway. It'd be interesting how many people would come out and say I was wrong if Arteta does go on to lift either the Champions League, which is hugely unlikely, or the Premier League, which is also quite unlikely. But if he doesn't, these are the sorts of managers I think are out there, and they all come with their own difficulties. Who knows how many managers will be available at the end of this season? I think when you look at the top 12 management teams in Europe, you're looking at Inter Milan with Simone Inzaghi, who looks heaven-made, who looks set to stay in that role for some time. If you look at Allegri at Juventus, it's unlikely that he's going to want to move, although he's always linked speculatively with Arsenal, even though he doesn't speak English either. As I said, Thomas Tuchel, I don't think necessarily will be Bayern manager. But this also creates the other problem, which is at the time that you want us to go and get a new manager, Barcelona looking, Bayern could well be looking, and Liverpool will be looking. So any new manager, the Xabi Alonso, is far more likely to take a Liverpool job than he ever is an Arsenal job. And Xabi Alonso may not win the Bundesliga. He may just be a really good manager because he almost won it. In which case, isn't Arteta a really good manager for almost winning the Premier League? Let me know in the comments how you feel about this. If any of the people I've mentioned are your hot favourites, or if there's anyone I've overlooked. I have, as a rule, overlooked Bielsa and Benitez because they're working, and Zidane because he said multiple times he doesn't want to manage in England and turned down very lucrative offers to do so. I personally feel as though when you balance the fact that Arteta's taken us on an upward trajectory from where we were, when you balance the fact that there isn't a natural successor out there that's doing well enough that you would think bring him in, certainly an ex-Arsenal player isn't really in contention there. I think we are, if we can all agree that at the moment he may be, you either think he is exactly the right man to manage a team, and I don't think there's many people who think Arteta is absolutely, definitely going to win us silverware and take us to the next level. But there are some. Most of us, I think, are in that category of, look, he's doing a good job so far, let's get behind him and support him. But if you're in that 25% who want him rid, then which of the managers I've talked about appeal to you most? And please do let me know in the comments if there's any I've overlooked. I am not somebody who thinks that Arteta is without fault. I do think that there are things he's doing right and wrong, and later on I'm going to be doing a video analysing what I think are his strengths and weaknesses as an Arsenal manager and what our likely prospects are. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, that would be the right time to do it so that you can be updated with everything that happens on this channel. It's a channel that's coming up to its first year anniversary, and I'm so thrilled with all the support that you've given me so far. I thought Thursday's live stream was the best we've done, and I hope we can do one every week just as good. If you want to be part of it, let me know in the comments or get in touch on dangoonerchannel@gmail.com. And until I see you again, be lucky and lots of love.
I love Arsenal Football Club so much. Pretty much first thing I do every morning when I wake up is I get a Gooner channel now. Oh, baby, yeah. It's about the best thing there is on the YouTube, and I like it more than cheeseburgers, and I love cheeseburgers. The Gooner channel is 100% dedicated to the Arsenal, who, as we all know, are by far the greatest team the world has ever seen.